My name is Steve Sink. I am the Crime Prevention Manager with the Albuquerque Police Department. I'm a civilian just like you. I took this class here a while back, and although you're going to be learning a lot this morning about avoiding accidents and that sort of thing on the road, we thought we'd take a little bit different look at safety on our roads. I'm going to talk a little bit, some foundational information that we're going to lay out, and I'm going to build on that as we go, and we're going to finish with road rage and some of the ways to de-escalate. Road rage has been quite an issue over the last year, so I think you all remember a horrible incident. You have an envelope. You don't need to get the information out right now. Maybe you can review it at your convenience, but I will be mentioning some of it. I frame a talk like this in a couple different ways, and you can dispute this if you want. We live in a completely different world than we used to, right? You know, and whether it's technologically speaking or whatever, one of the things that has changed clearly, I read that back in the 50s and 60s, Albuquerque had about 50,000 people, right? And now we're, way over 600,000. So one of the things that's clearly changed is the volume of traffic on our roads. And all you got to do is drive into work one day and you kind of get it, don't you? It's a lot of stuff going on out there. The other way I like to frame this is that I think that you and I need to do a really good job of looking after each other. I just think that if all the good guys in this community do a good job of watching out for each other, that I think that we can raise safety and security no matter where we're at, whether it's on the roads, parking lots, your neighborhoods. So part of this information I'm going to give you is about how you can look after me and my family. So thank you very much for that in advance. But I do it for you every single day. It kind of starts off with a brochure that talks about how to report a crime and how to be a good witness. And remember that a lot of this is really going to be not only about you and your city-owned equipment, but also you and your family. So kind of keep both those environments in mind. This brochure talks about how to keep an eye on each other, how to report a crime, and how to be a good witness. I think we all get what 911's about if you need it, right? You're hurt, somebody else is hurt, you see a crime in progress, always 911. Are you familiar, however, with our non-emergency number, 242 COPS? Is that a number that we're familiar with? And by the way, all the good numbers are on the back of this brochure. 242 COPS. It's called non-emergency, and it's exactly what it is. It's for those instances that we don't need to hurry and get out there, right? But I think it's important to also understand that 911 and 242 COPS are similar in that they're both a dispatchable call. You're asking for an officer to come out and be with you, to come see you, whatever that issue might be. So one thing I always like to kind of mention, just for good general information, that if you don't need an officer, but maybe you need a police report for insurance purposes or whatever, we've developed some different ways for you to report. We have a telephone report unit. You can actually call this number and talk to a live person, and they'll actually help you fill out the report it from the convenience of your living room or whatever. We're expanding the ability to report certain things on the internet. We're trying to make it convenient for a couple reasons. One, we want you to, want to be easy for you. But the other thing is that we want you, the good citizens, to have a zero tolerance. We want you to be reporting everything. Because if you think about it, the only way that law enforcement needs to give you attention at work, where you live, is that if you're calling things in statistically, that they can look that things are going on. I like to use a simple example of that, is that you leave your house some morning to come to work and you realize that somebody stole the lawn furniture off your front porch, right? And what you might be thinking is that, well, that furniture was 20 years old, you were sick of looking at it, and the dude did you a favor by hauling it off, right? Well, that may be true, but it's still a crime, and what you might not realize is that maybe one of your neighbors down the street had their car broken into that same evening. Maybe another neighbor got their home broken into that previous afternoon. Again, reporting all these things actually gives law enforcement an opportunity to give you attention, to put resources if they feel like that's necessary. And again, the only way we know is if you're taking the time to report it. You are literally the eyes and ears on the road, in your neighborhoods, at the workplace, whatever. The other thing that this talks about is being a good witness, that if you ever see something out driving, whether you're working or otherwise or at home, and you have to call something in, and when it comes down to that moment in the conversation, that you have to describe that person or a vehicle or whatever, this is how we'd kind of simply like for you to break it down. I don't expect anybody to memorize this stuff. I just think it's kind of important to understand big picture. This is how we'd like for you to break down a physical description, again, of a person, vehicle, whatever the case might be. Now, one of the things it talks about is reporting suspicious behavior to 242 cops. And I'm going to suggest that not all of us can completely define the same way what suspicious behavior is. I mean, if you look at it this way, we live in different neighborhoods across this city, we shop at different stores, we work in different locations. Not everything is exactly suspicious to me that it might be to you. So let's break that down and make it simple, because we actually want you to report suspicious behavior, because oftentimes suspicious behavior is a prelude to a crime. So why don't we call it in and maybe we can prevent a crime from occurring. So suspicious behavior is easy if you'll do one thing. Give some general definition to normal behavior in a given environment. In other words, if you can kind of decide what's supposed to be happening in a given environment, anything that doesn't meet that general definition of normal could be looked at as potentially suspicious. So a couple of real quick examples. One is where you live. I keep referencing that because as city employees, we want you to be safe no matter where you're at. But at home, think about what you know. You know the faces of your neighbors a lot of times, right? You know what kind of vehicles they drive oftentimes. You might even know what the little kids look like when they're out playing in the front yard. You are literally the experts on normal behavior. So aren't you, if you're the experts on normal, you would be the perfect person to recognize if someone doesn't belong or if a vehicle doesn't belong. So we want you to be able to tap into that. Another good example is a parking lot, whether it's work, grocery store, wherever, whatever parking lots you can talk about. We have, just so you'll know and you priority get this, we have some problems in parking lots on occasion. I mean, if someone wants to steal a purse or break into a car or maybe even steal a car, they might go to a parking lot because it's kind of a target-rich environment, plenty to choose from, right? So we want you to pay attention that if you see something in a parking lot that doesn't seem right, we want that to get your attention and do something about it. So what's normal? I don't know about you, but I don't loiter in parking lots. Do you loiter in parking lots? Please say no. Right. So one thing, we're always in a hurry. We might be running late to work or to a class or going to run home on the way home and stop at the grocery store. Let me define for you what normal behavior is in a parking lot. We find a parking stall. We get out of our vehicle and we go in and shop or whatever that activity is. And when we're done with that, we walk back to our vehicle, we get in, we back out and leave. Isn't that pretty much normal? So if you, the good citizen, see anything other than what I just described as normal, I want that to get your attention. And we want you to do something about it. So it brings me to this next brochure. It's called Personal Safety. Now, personal safety really can be when you're driving or whatever. So let me lay out two more foundational issues and then we're going to move on. One is the concept of being aware of your surroundings. And don't we hear that a lot? And really what that's really saying is we just simply want you to know when people are around you, that no one's going to sneak up on you or come out of nowhere. So we want you to be aware of your surroundings. The second part to that is to trust your instincts. So that if you see something on the road or in your neighborhoods or in a parking lot that you're thinking, that just doesn't seem right. Maybe it's not normal in that environment. So see it and sense it for what it could potentially be. And the third most important part to that is follow through. We want you to do something with the information you've gained. That if you don't like what you're seeing, that we don't want you to ignore that. I can tell you that I talk to citizens just like you all the time. And a lot of times they're victims, and that's what brings them to crime prevention, right? They don't want to be a victim anymore. And they'll say things like this, and I'll paraphrase. You know, I had a funny feeling about that guy, and I thought, well, no big deal, and I proceeded on, and they became a victim of a crime. So in other words, they kind of ignored what they were thinking. So sometimes it's, you know, maybe you're walking out to your vehicle, and you see someone hanging out near your car. And we just described that as being potentially suspicious because hanging out in a parking lot isn't normal. So if you're thinking, it's probably no big deal, I'll just go ahead and get in my car and move on, you've ignored it. So we want you to follow through. Sometimes follow through is don't go there that moment in time. Just decide, you know what, I'm not going to go there that moment in time. And maybe a follow through could be, I'm going to take another route to my vehicle or my destination. I'm going to go around. Sometimes follow through is go back into the store or the workplace. If you have security, that's great. And say, you know, excuse me, but man, there's somebody out there. I don't feel right about going out there either. Could you go check it out, or could you walk me out? You know, that kind of safety in numbers sort of thing. So again, not listening, not tapping into what you know to be not normal or somehow weird is going to put you in a bad spot. See it, sense it, and follow through. Is that a reasonable basic concept? And really that's all about you, isn't it? Here's the last foundational thing that we can talk about. Every crime must have three things in order to be committed. If you can visualize a triangle, doesn't a triangle have 3 points to it, right? And so what it says is every crime must have three things in order to be committed. Conversely, if we take all three of those things away, a crime will never ever occur. And wouldn't that be optimal, right? So here's how it works. And you can apply this to the work, property, you, your homes, your kids. Every crime's got to have a target, doesn't it? The thing that they're going to go after. Residential burglary might be the TV. It might be identity theft. It might be a person that they're going after. Every crime's got to have a target. The second thing that every crime must have is an opportunity to be committed. Opportunities come in tons of different ways. I'll tell you one thing, that if you're walking in public looking at your handheld device and paying attention to that when you're walking, you're providing an opportunity for someone to come up real close to you before you even realize they're there. So sometimes, it's kind of like we don't want you to do that while you're driving because it's a distraction and it can cause harm and wrecks and that kind of thing. I think that kind of distraction can be harmful to you and your family if you're doing this in public. So every crime's got to have an opportunity, and we're going to apply some of these specifically to the vehicle in just a minute. The third thing that every crime must have is someone needs to be motivated to go get your target. Motivation, when it comes to property crimes, I got to tell you, we've done the studies, we've looked at things, we've talked to the criminals. Almost 100% of property crimes in particular is due to the addiction of heroin, meth, and crack, and/or crack, right? It's the addiction of these drugs that generate our property crimes in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Whether it's residential burglary, auto theft, auto burglary, that's what's motivating people to go get our stuff. So we can't do a whole lot about that. You and I, the good guys, we're just trying to live our life, take care of our family, and be safe, right? So let's not worry about that one. Here's, however, what you and I can focus in on. We can focus in on these two. The concept is remove targets from view every single time you can. The second part is reduce opportunities anytime you can. Remove and reduce. So let's start applying that. This last brochure in your envelope is called Auto Theft. Now, I've talked to Risk. I know that city vehicles go missing, city property go missing all the time. But you can also apply this to your own stuff, your own property, your own vehicles, right? So let's start with the title. Auto theft. Everybody understands that we have a general problem with auto theft in Albuquerque, New Mexico, right? Is this a surprise to anybody? No, it's not. And we've always been really high on those auto theft lists nationwide. We are getting better, and I'm going to kind of let you know how you can help yourself. But, you know, every crime have reasons why they're committed. And one of the primary reasons our vehicles are stolen, whether they're work or personal, are due to our proximity to what? Mexico. That's exactly right. Because a lot of our vehicles are going southbound I-25. And they might be stolen 1 o'clock in the morning out in front of your house. And by the time you get up to come to work, leave your house or apartment, it's already crossed the border and probably resold. So understand that the people that live along that international border just simply have issues with auto theft that people that maybe live in Wisconsin don't have or whatever. But, you know, I love it down here. I've lived in Albuquerque for 20 years, and I came from Wichita, Kansas. I don't want to move back to Wichita, Kansas. Bugs and tornadoes and such. I love it here. All I'm suggesting that if you love it as well and you love your stuff, that just take a look at this brochure and really what it talks about is putting multiple layers of protection on your vehicles. Multiple layers, as many layers as you can apply. And so what would be maybe the very first best layer of protection when it comes to your vehicle? Wouldn't it be roll-up windows and locked doors? And you would think that that would be one of the things that we do no matter what. But here's an interesting statistics that we know. I'm just going to share this with you. A third, statistically speaking, a third of residential burglary, auto theft, and auto burglary are due to a non-forced entry. What would a non-forced entry imply? Unlocked doors. And it's like, that just, you know, it kind of drives us crazy. We read the reports. And so what's happening is that a third of you collectively aren't rolling up windows and locking doors when you leave your vehicle or your house or apartment every single time. Because a third of the time they're getting in and they don't have to break anything. They don't have to force their way into anything. So when it comes to auto theft or auto burglary, every single time you leave your vehicle, your work vehicle, your personal vehicle, whatever, is roll up windows and lock doors. Because if you think about it, that's the perfect segue into auto burglary. Now we know, talking to Risk, that we have a lot of city-owned property go missing out of vehicles. The tough books, the laptops, tools and that sort of thing, whatever it is that you use for your job. So you know what, if you think about it, we all own that equipment, right? Because it was paid for with taxpayer money. I bought that. So I want you to go ahead and do whatever you can to secure that equipment or those items. So again, auto theft, roll up windows and lock doors. Here's what they do. They might be doing it out in this parking lot right now. We don't know. Maybe they're doing it out in front of your house at 1 o'clock in the morning. You don't know that either. So these people, usually drug addicted folks, are looking down inside a vehicle. And they're looking for a visible what? Target. And they're checking for an easy opportunity. And so one thing is that we just need to start moving stuff out. Every single time you leave your personal or work vehicle, take items out of there and take them into the workplace, take them to your office, take them inside your house or apartment. So this is what we want that scenario to look like. We want that scenario to include some guy looking down inside a vehicle and they don't see one thing that's been left in full view. And every single time, 100% of the time, the windows are rolled up and the door's locked. Here's what they're probably going to do. Aren't they probably going to go to the next car? Because there wasn't anything to see and there's going to be too much trouble. They want the path of least resistance, so they're going to go to the next car. And if you do those same things, they're going to go to the next one, and we'll just keep displacing crime right out of your work parking lot, right out of your neighborhoods. And that's really all about personal responsibility from my perspective. That's you taking control of your property. Remove targets and reduce opportunities. Now, there's a couple things with vehicles. We have these cards available, and these cards have gotten very popular, and we got tons of them. And really what they're designed to do is to fill out all the information about your vehicle. And you put it in your pocket. And if your vehicle if you discover it's stolen, this is actually the information we need for you to call in to get your car back. as soon as possible. And it has information about year, make, model, colors, identifying marks, license plate, VIN numbers. Does everybody have your VIN numbers memorized? Nobody has your VIN number. But that's actually a key ingredient to identifying a missing car, a stolen car. So the sooner you can call this in its entirety, the better it is for you to get your vehicle retrieved. The other thing about the inside the vehicle, and I'll just share this with you, one is we tend to leave garage door openers inside our vehicle, right? Because it's convenient. But what about the vehicles that are parked in driveways? What about the vehicles that are parked in a driveway because it can't fit in the garage? Maybe there's too many vehicles or too much stuff. And so if we leave a garage door opener in the vehicle in a driveway, you see how that could really develop into a problem, not only for property crimes, but man, they got access into your house or whatever. So we need to start thinking through those things and not leave it so easy for them to get in our property. I'll let you know one other thing that we're seeing, that if you go to a movie, for instance, and you go to a movie and you're gone for about 2 hours while you're inside the theater, here's what they're doing on occasion. And they're doing it with also in fitness facilities. We've had a huge rash of auto burglaries in parking lots of fitness facilities because they know you're going to be in there for a while, and they go to your vehicle, and a third of the time it's unlocked, but there's stuff on the inside that they can see, and maybe if they can't see, they're going to go for the glove box and that sort of thing. So understand what they're looking for. And I guess if you have your vehicle registration and insurance in the glove box, and you have a garage door opener in the console, and they know they got 2 hours before you're coming home, you see how that might be kind of damaging for you and your insurance company, right? It gives them plenty of time to get access and have access. So, but here's one thing that I'll do. And then we're going to drive. I just think all this is good information. I've taken registration and insurance out of my vehicle, and they're in my pocket. I just fold them up and put them with my driver's license. And the state statute just requires that those two pieces of paper are inside the vehicle when you're operating it, right? And every time I'm operating my vehicle, it's in my pocket. And so I'm abiding by the state statute, but I'm not giving these guys a chance to steal my identity or know where I live. Little things like this in a changing world. I don't want you to feel like it's paranoid behavior. I just think that based on what we know, I'm just sharing it with you, I just think it's prudent behavior in a changing world. We decided at the very beginning that things are different than they used to be. And those are just a couple things. All right, let's start driving. Now, I've made a couple changes while I drive. And I'd like for you to maybe think about altering some habits and routines. Whether you're driving a city vehicle, we got 8,000 drivers is what I heard this morning, or your personal vehicle. The first thing I've started doing is driving with my doors locked. Now, the brand new vehicles have a wonderful security feature, which is automatic door locks, right? I love that feature. If you don't have a car like that, you become the automatic door locker. Just kind of get in the habit of pushing that button, and you're in a locked vehicle. The second thing that I've done, and maybe you've seen people that do this, I used to maybe mindlessly roll my vehicle up to the bumper in front of me at a red light. And you see people that are about that far away from the car in front of them. Well, listen, if anybody were to walk up to your vehicle, work vehicle or personal vehicle, and you are that far away from the car in front of you, I'm going to suggest that your options are limited as to what you can do. There's a panel in here called carjacking. And so it doesn't happen often, but if we develop some habits, that maybe we can head off that happening to you and your family. So I broke that habit. I now stop far enough away from the vehicle in front of me that if my gut says I got to take evasive action, I've got literally the turning radius to leave, right? If you took driver's ed maybe a few decades ago or whatever, or maybe your kids took it recently, one thing they teach them is to see tires in front of the vehicle in front of you, right? And really what that's doing is giving them distance, giving you options that you can literally pull your car out around it. You've got the turning radius to leave if you think you need to. And the third thing that I've done, it's very similar to walking in a parking lot. I want to know when people are around the roadway. Now, do we have our fair share of people standing along the roadway, holding a cardboard sign or whatever? We got some of that going on, and the city's trying to, kind of abate that a little bit. There's a Better Way program, that kind of thing. But the point is that there's people around the roadway. I just want you to know if they're there. That's it. I don't want you staring at people. I don't want you mad dogging them, whatever. I just want you to know. So here's a guy standing over near the roadway. And he takes one step off that car heading for you. And here's what you've done. Here's the environment you've created just by completing a couple simple habit changes. You saw him before he stepped off the curb, so you've got that distance to respond. You're in a locked vehicle, and you've got distance to leave. You see how that puts you in a better position? You get to somehow control your environment. I just want to put all that good stuff into your hands. Now, if you think you're being followed, I know that the city, you have a lot of valuable equipment sometimes. Sometimes we have copper tubing in the back of your pickup, whatever you've got. But if you think someone's following you, you left the parking lot, I don't know, you've made a couple turns, you're out running errands, and every time you look in your rearview mirror, the same dude's back there. Now you're going to learn this morning about active driving, right? Watching your mirrors. You're kind of just paying attention to stuff that's going on around you. So every time you keep looking in your rearview mirror, it's the same guy. And now it's starting to make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. It's just not a normal thing, right? So if you made 4 consecutive right turns, where would that put you? Exact same spot that you started. Didn't you just kind of go around the block? So if you took this dude around the block and he's still back there after that 4th turn, I'm going to suggest that you've got a potential problem that you need to address. We need to escalate our response. So what do? Well, I mentioned at the very beginning that we need to help each other out. So one thing that you could do if you need attention is to go find us. Go to a well-lit, active location where there's a lot of activity, a lot of good people like us. Because they want anonymity, typically, but you want attention. And those two things don't match very well, right? And they're likely to disengage and go away. You just you were aware of your surroundings, you didn't like what you were feeling, and so you followed through. And that's how you can help yourself. Don't ignore these signs. So, and again, it goes back to see, sense, and follow through. Now, I want to conclude with the concept of road rage. Road rage really got our attention about a year ago, right? I mean, we have certain words that if we hear a word, it conjures up a memory. If I said the word lily, isn't that road rage? A little girl that was 4, never be 5. And man, that got everybody's attention. But I'll bet you that all of us in this room at one time or another have experienced some level of road rage, whether we're working, whether we're driving, whatever. And most times they don't go anywhere, right? Sometimes they get a little scary. So here's how that really works. I teach a lot of safety in the workplace. And one of the things I talk about, and maybe you work for the city in a location where you sometimes have upset people, upset citizens. Anybody have that kind of job? Where they get ticked off about one thing or another. Okay, well what I teach is whether this person standing in front of me increases their agitation or decreases their agitation is probably going to be dependent on your behavior, not theirs. Because if you match their intensity, they're upset and you get upset right back at them and you're kind of squared off and you're going to match that intensity. Well, what are they probably going to do? Aren't they going to get a little bit madder, right? And if you match that intensity, you see how these things tend to get out of control. So one thing we want to de-escalate in the workplace. Just understand it's not personal. They're not mad at you personally. They're mad at something that happened in the city and you're the representative, and so you're going to get that wrath. Well, the road rage is essentially the same thing. You're out there driving and I don't know, you're driving your work vehicle. And we already established that it's a busy world in which we live. And you cut some guy off. And you didn't mean to. You know, it's just stuff happens. I mean, these things happen. But what you didn't realize is that you just cut off the dude that's having the worst day you can imagine. He's already upset. And now he's got somebody in front of him that he can take it out on. So you look in your rearview mirror, and there's a guy, you know, pulling up and stopping right on your tail. He's waving at you with less than 5 fingers, right? You can see these 4-letter words coming out his mouth. He is upset. He's gesturing. He's driving crazy. And so it's like, uh-oh, what do I do? I'm going to say, I'd be kind of frightened. It'd get my attention. My heart rate's up, right? So here's what you could do. You could wave back at him with less than 5 fingers. You could step on your brakes and slow way down. I'll teach him a lesson. Get off my tail. You could gesture at him. You could do all those things, and you just matched his intensity, didn't you? And so what he's likely to do? He's going to take it up a notch. Oh, yeah? And here's where I can talk primarily to the guys in the room. I don't know what it is about guys, but we have kind of grown up in a culture where ever since we've been on a little playground in elementary school, and somebody does something to us, we say, oh, yeah, and we're going to match that intensity. We're going to show them, right? And so we have to swallow our pride. We've been hearing that ever since Lily got hurt, about swallowing your pride, about taking a deep breath. Remember, the guy's not mad at you. It's not a personal thing. He's just upset at the behavior, the thing that you accidentally did. So if he doesn't know you and it's not personal, then let's not take it personal. You got kids in the car. You got yourself in the car. I want you to not change one thing. How you de-escalate road rage is don't do one thing different. Don't slow down. Don't gesture. Don't wave. Don't motion. Stay the speed limit. Stay in your lane. And, you know, we're going to keep an eye on the guy, but we're going to take a deep breath and say, this isn't personal. I'm going to de-escalate, and I get control of that. And so that's exactly what you do. Don't do one thing. Now here's probably what's going to happen. He's going to come up to that road, and he's going to take a left. And he's going to go home, because he turns left on that road every single day. And he's probably going to flip you off one last time, and he's going to be gone. And you're going to go, whew, boy, that's starting to get weird. That was scary, right? But what happens if you don't? What happens if he doesn't make that left? And he's staying with you, and it seems to be escalating more all the time. Now, I'm going to suggest you're going to be more frightened every second, right? So what do? Well, we talked about going and finding us. You know, that safety in numbers thing. But listen, if you are very, very frightened and you can't find us, here's what I suggest that you do. Everybody has a cell phone now, right? And if you're at home and you're scared, what are the 3 numbers you dial? 911. Well, I'm going to suggest you do the same thing. I say get that cell phone out and dial 911. Now, there's a little bit of a problem with driving hands-held phone in Albuquerque, right? It's against the law, correct? Well, if you can tell them that you're scared, you've got your family in the car, I don't know what to do, please help. The cop's not going to give you a hard time. If any officer gives you a hard time, just tell them that Gordon Eden said it was okay. So, that was a joke, by the way. Now, my point is, the cop's going to get it. You know what? You use the right terminology. I'm afraid. This guy's crazy. I don't know what he's doing. He's scaring me. I need help. Please help me. That's the kind of terminology, right? And then what do you say? Well, you tell them where you're at, what road you're on, what direction of travel, maybe a cross street that you're getting ready to pass over, kind of that coordinate issue. You tell them what kind of vehicle you're in, right? And you do the best to tell them what kind of a vehicle that dude is in. maybe a white pickup truck. We don't have time to really get into detail on that one. And you stay on the phone because this is an ongoing issue. You're going to stay on the phone until that dude's gone. And you're going to continue to give updates as to where you are. That's how you get help in a scary situation. But really, the whole thing about road rage is de-escalation. I just can't imagine that if something happened to your family and you were even remotely responsible for that, how horrible that would be. That's something that never goes away. And it's easy, but you have to understand it's not personal. Swallow your pride, take a deep breath, get yourself under control, and don't change one thing. Is that a reasonable thought? All right. Lastly, my number, by the way, is on the front of all these brochures. I run programs like Neighborhood Watch. I do a lot of stuff in communities and etc. If you have questions about stuff that's going on in your community, your neighborhoods, give me a call. We can talk about it. I'd be glad to do that. Just to review, remove targets and reduce opportunities in every environment you can think of. And be aware of your surroundings, whether you're driving or walking, and be prepared to respond in some way. Is that a reasonable thought? Okay, my name's Steve Sink. Call me if you need anything. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.